Hello out there, welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Frazier. Back by popular demand, the documented gray wizard of historical knowledge himself, freshly documented gray wizard of historical knowledge himself, Mr. Eric D. Smith, in the hot seat, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing as well as a person who knows how to pronunciate the word Harkonnen.
Is that a good thing?
It is, yeah. Everyone else is going around saying Harkonnen, apparently.
Harkonnen. Oh, is this because you're reading?
Not reading, but listening to the unabridged audiobook of the Dune series.
So it's Harkonnen, not Harkonnen?
Exactly. Yeah. Apparently, Frank Herbert's son was listening to his father read on some tapes. And, of course, has, in person, too. But I guess he pronounced it Harkonnen. And I guess David Lynch, with his, I think it was 1984 Dune movie, made it very popular to say Harkonnen.
Well, that's because that's the way I heard it in my head, too.
Yeah. And maybe that's just how most people would have read it. I think I would have read it that way, but since I haven't actually read any of the books and I've just been listening to the unabridged audio versions.
Right.
But it was cool because I was listening to an interview at the end of it, and that's one of the things they were talking about. They said that a lot of the mail they get is how to pronounce these different names and stuff.
If I remember right, though, I thought that I think my version of the book had like a dictionary and maps and stuff in the back of it.
It may have.
So there was like that adverb, verb, noun sort of Webster's dictionary sort of, and I thought there was a pronunciation in there, but I never really gave it much. I watched the movie first.
Yeah, me too.
So it sort of cemented that in my head.
Yep, me too. It's weird listening to it, but it was neat to know that they said that they had worked with the guy who was doing the audio books to get all of that right, so it's kind of neat that my first experience is going to be in that way.
Right.
And in case you're listening and wondering, this all started when we were talking about how I wanted to read these books, but I never really had the time and kind of the interest because I'd known so much about the Dune books, hearing it from other people and seeing the movies and the TV series and all that. It was hard to get through the book. And so I wanted to start reading it from the beginning chronologically because I like doing that. And everybody I would ask who had read those books were like, "Oh man, you don't want to start with those. Those are apocryphal. Those are trash. They nowhere near as good as. Don't start with those. So of course I did, and
because you did it chronologically.
Yeah. So I'm about 3/4 of the way through the third novel, and I like them so far. I mean, either everybody's doing that thing where I don't like this X-Men movie because it wasn't like the comic book sort of thing,
right?
Or I'm in for a true treat here soon,
where
I get truly blown away by the time I hit the actual Frank Herbert books. But that's like 4 books away or something like that. They wrote a bunch in the beginning.
Yeah. I would say that my experience, if I read it, the first Dune book. And I found it extremely descriptive. Like, it was very easy to get lost in it as a world kind of thing.
I'll like it if it's like that, especially if I'm still doing the audiobook.
It's well written,
Yeah. Lots of, it reminds me of something that, the way you described it, something that Michael Moorcock might write, as opposed to, say, Roger Zelazny.
Yeah, I have no frames of reference for either of those. I'm not so meaning what?
Well, Michael Moorcock tends to have a lot of padding and descriptives in his book, and Zelazny tends to be very direct.
Okay.
Like he's got 10 books written in first person.
Okay.
So when you're talking about action scenes and things like that, it's like rapid fire writing, whereas Michael Moorcock would start off describing the landscape and the weather and the inhabitants, and then the scene at hand from afar, and drawing closer and closer until he was talking about a particular stone setting inside of a ring on someone's hand.
Tolkien was like that too.
Really?
I mean, that was I mean, his books. Their God, are they chewy? Ugh,
I've read The Hobbit, but I haven't read any of the others.
Yeah. Well, that was another thing. Was I mean, to the painful levels of detail. You sort of experienced his worlds.
Well, and that's those books. The Lord of the Rings are on that same list that the Dune books were for me. They were books that were going to be difficult to read because everyone's read them and everyone's told you about them, and people's done them in movies and they've done them in animations. And we got at the university, the library where I worked at, they have a whole large section of scholarly work based on Tolkien, like something like 15 some books, and none of them are the actual books themselves. They're just essays and stuff either from him or on him, or the meaning of the books, or that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the big clock.
Oh yeah,
I got the big clock shut off for some reason.
Huh. We need to see how long we're going, so we need clockage.
Well, this is what I get for I made some edits to the bass track.
See, guys, you can hear he's all the way like 25 feet looking for the clock. No.
I don't know where it went. I thought it was under options.
Maybe did you update?
It's like show clock or some shit like that.
Maybe try view. Is there a view tab?
Yeah. I'll bet that's where it's at. View. Big clock.
Hey.
See, now we know we've been doing this for 7 minutes.
Mark. Editing will fix that. It may not be on Mark.
Well, I use the template for everything now because it just lines everything up. And the only thing I got to do is put the exit music, track at the end.
Do you ever like edit anything out?
Yeah, I go in and edit
explosions and that happen.
Yeah, well, when bad technical shit happens, because that does happen periodically. But also, if someone's on the show and wants me to take something out, or if they were unsure of something and they didn't like the way, I'll cut stuff out. Absolutely,
that's right.
Yeah, I'll even throw the whole podcast away if they don't like it. So I haven't had anybody take me up on that yet, but I have had some people, I've edited things out for them in the past.
We'll throw this one away.
Oh, I don't think so, man. This is when you and I just get on here and just bullshit. These are like the most sought after, watched, downloaded podcasts that we do by far. I don't know what it is. People just like listening to us fucking.
Well, I don't know. I got a lot I can ramble about, but I don't know why anybody would want to hear it.
Well, I've been talking to Nikolai Zhenkov. I've been trying to, because I would like. That's the guy that runs the Orko R group. I think, where's he at? He's in Germany or Russia, someplace over there.
I thought it was Russia, but
like
it could be Germany,
Northern European countries. And he, I've been waiting to see when we can get you back on, because it's really more your subject matter than it is mine. I just think it's a fascinating topic, but I don't know it in any detail. And so I thought it'd be kind of neat to have you guys back on together. So we'll see what happens. I got to, time permitting, obviously, because Jesus, you've been like a one-legged man in a butt kicking party. You've been busy.
Yeah, happily so.
Yeah. Well, you're through your bachelor's now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So big hurdle crossed there.
My professor said that I was the only one that graduated with a history degree.
That's kind of sad, isn't it?
I don't know. Maybe it means I'll have some job openings.
Yeah, right. It's not a.
And I didn't feel too sad about it. I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I can distinguish myself now.
Yeah, right.
Like everybody had like a science, applied sciences.
Yeah.
And one guy had a criminal science degree. It was a bachelor's.
I wonder what that's. Oh, criminal science. Yeah, that's like to be a police officer or something, isn't it? Or some sort of.
I just remember his last name was Burnside because that's Grizz's last name.
We've talked about Grizz on here before, right?
I don't know.
The living tree ant.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
He's
He
like giant.
he came over a couple of days ago and hung out with me for a while.
Yeah.
Yep. Not much is new with him.
Well,
He said, in fact, he said he was getting bored with things, so just thinking about leaving, moving, or something.
just head someplace warmer. I've been spending a bunch of time lately on engineering jobs down in Florida.
Yeah, man, I've seen that.
It's been a blast, man.
It's like you're always someplace warmer than here.
No, I'm not, because I was in Indianapolis last week, and it wasn't warmer. Holy shit, it was cold. I mean, it was cold, 20s, kind of cold.
Jeez.
But it was a good facility, a really good plant. So it was well insulated, and their climate control was superior. So inside the plant was extremely comfortable.
What'd they make?
All I can say is they put liquids in bottles, right? I can't say. I can tell you off mic, but I can't tell you on mic.
It's one of those companies that produces the youth serum for the people in orbit around the Earth, like in the 100.
No, man, it's soft drinks. It's always it's soft drink. For me, it's soft drinks or beer generally. Although I've done some like salad dressings and stuff like that too. But
it's getting like that with me.
we're doing a bunch of we're doing line upgrades. We're going in and taking the old controls and controllers and their motor drives out and upgrading them to like. We're bringing them from like the 80s to the 2010s,
Into the 21st century.
And that's kind of the thing with this stuff, though, man. Is it's these industrial controllers and things that I engineer, program, and build are so robust, and some of these things have been in the plants running nonstop, 24 hours a day for 30 years.
Yeah, man, that's crazy.
Okay, think about that. What other device do you know of that can do that? There aren't many.
I have books that don't last that long.
Right. So we're going in and taking them and converting all of the code to, modern day controllers and things and upgrading them and putting them on, some of the networks that these things run on are dial-up speed networks, 57K.
Wow.
And they run, and it's and it's worked for, obviously, for decades here. So we go in and we take them and we pull all that stuff out and put it all in. It's all Ethernet, 10 base 100 speed. So it's like light years ahead of where it was, and do these upgrades. And it makes it easier for the facilities and for newer equipment to be brought in because it can
Hook
to
up
it.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of modernizes everything. But you have to do that base layer, that controls layer. So that's been a lot of what I've been not really engineering anything new. So in a sense, it's almost a relief.
Yeah, like an easy way just to relax and still have a job and do a job. When I think of your job, I always think you're the guy that makes plants quieter.
I do that too.
I mean, essentially, at the end of the day, if things are running smoother, which is what you're doing, like the plant's quieter.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
right? Like it's smoother, it operates, and lines move, and nothing's banging.
The better we do our job, the fewer people that are necessary throughout the process too. Like you figure what a piece of conveyor alone does the job of a person that used to pick things up with either a fork truck or by hand or whatever and move them.
So you're saying you're in league with the robots?
Yeah, I've been accused of that. Jeff Cody's always tagging me and shit on Facebook and been like, "What did you do?" Every time like something bad happens, the James Cofer, my buddy from the Navy's always doing that too. He's like, "You programmed them to do this, didn't you?" And I said, "Well, only if you get in the way." He tagged me in some article. Some guy got impaled by like 10 steel rods or stainless steel rods from a machine, and it's. So yeah, they're rising up now. I'm programming our replacements literally.
Your efficiency is cutting jobs. And that conveyor belt takes the place of 5 people.
It's funny. There's
10 now that I finished with it.
How easily this kind of stuff also gets misunderstood. Because I worked for this company that was trying to design and is designing what they call external combustion engines, which is just basically what it is you heat some sort of fluid and the fluid does the work inside the engine. So it's external combustion engine instead of like blowing gasoline up inside a piston, right? So it's like a steam engine, but it's a little more complicated than that. But anyway, they had designed a system that where this robotics group was building this robot that would forage, okay, and so you could put it out in the woods and it could like literally look for stuff to combust. So they thought this would be a really good match for this external combustion engine because you can like throw leaves, anything, as long as you can get it to catch on fire and make heat. You can create this generator that keeps this thing functioning.
Kind of like gasifiers.
Yeah, I mean, but not even that complicated. Just think a potbelly stove. It's running around on an automated wagon. Okay, you'd be a lot closer, right? And then inside there is a chamber where water gets heated, turns into steam, and then that steam turns this engine that spins a generator that runs all of this stuff. And I think it was a DARPA project. It's been on the news and stuff too, right? Where because the DARPA's always screwing around with this stuff where they have like these robots that can carry things, and I did some work too on an autonomous or a remotely like a drone tank with a company out of Maine. It was just really fun, kind of stuff. But anyway, so this thing, the idea was that you could have these robots that could go out and almost be like sentries and get data, and they could go out and forage. So you could turn them loose in the woods, and they pick sticks up and things like that, and we're able to have a process where they would digest this somehow and chop it up, crush it up, whatever. It would go through a mechanism that would then be like pellet fed into this system, this closed loop system, to create rotary motion that created energy. And somehow this got turned into that this robot was going to kill people and then eat them and use the humans, like chew the humans up and digest them. Because I think the robot was called EATR, like eater, but it meant they were implying that it would pick up like dry material and branches and stuff. So I was kind of weirdly in the loop on this a little bit, and I've seen it show up on the internet. Joe Rogan and them are always talking about this eater robot, and I'm like screaming at him. I'm like, it didn't eat people. It ate sticks and biomass, and it didn't eat people. God, it wouldn't even make sense to eat people. They're like 75% water. You'd have to dry them out first.
But there's brain dead people. Did they eat those people?
Right. There's far more high BTU combustible content laying around in the woods than big sloppy wet people. So it's just funny how this thing has turned into this sort of, misconstrued, but how technology, now every time a machine eats somebody, it's like they have a conscience. You get tagged in a post. Yeah, trust me, the controllers I program don't have a conscience of any kind unless I give it to them.
Or really even an appetite.
And it's not even, it's all if then else kind of shit, right? So like the way you make machines safe is you put something there that if it's opened, you change that logic function, right? So it's if closed, run machine. If open, stop machine. It's literally that kind of stuff.
You don't put the 3 laws of robotics into any of that?
Yeah, but the problem is as us as programmers, the problem is we can never completely program out the actions of an operator. Human beings are just so unpredictable. Machines are great.
Like they're not following a code at all.
They get a little funky with temperature sometimes, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? Machines are so predictable. You kind of get an idea what they're going to do every time. Human beings do the strangest shit. You're like, wow, I never thought that anybody would put their head inside that mechanism, but here we are.
I've learned that from playing D&D for sure.
They're so terribly unpredictable.
Yeah, especially if they're using some sort of an avatar too. Like they're even more bold in their unpredictability.
I feel so good when after I go out and I do one of these, like especially bottling jobs, because it's such a symphony of different things that have to come together. And then these lines run. If it's a chain, and if any link in that chain breaks, the whole chain's down. It's done. So it's there are ways that you build in like time, because you have to sometimes. If a device needs to be fixed, you need to be able to buffer up, and then once you've fixed the problem, right? But it's like you've got all of this stuff has to work together. And it ebbs and flows, right? As and then things cycle up in speed and down in speed and stuff like this. So it's really it's really fascinating to watch it when it comes together and all the pieces are working. It becomes very much like a symphony that, you know, I've done lines that do, you know, 960 glass bottles per minute. And when you get that all moving and it's all running and it's fascinating to watch. To me, guess what? That's why I do it for a living.
Right? Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think they find that sort of thing in any complicated thing. You know, I think in particular, a lot of people get enjoyment out of that. Like, you know, people who are interested in math enjoy solving equations.
Yeah, right.
Which is akin to that, or like we were talking about earlier with D&D, you know, having all that come together, all the different parts and stuff for something, a successful orchestrated live thing that's happening when you're at the table and playing is much the same as having that machine on and running and everything's, you know, working together at the same time. And and if you're the orchestrator of that, like in a D&D game, like, or whatever, you know, then that you can see that and you can see parts that other people can't, and you know what's working and what's not, and that's a good feeling. And that's one of those things you can only get if you are the orchestrator.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or a part of the machine, or a person playing an instrument in the organ, or a person playing a character in a campaign.
Yeah. It's funny because it is very much similar to role-playing games in a lot of ways, in the sense that in a role-playing game, right, you have all these different mechanisms of tables and things that are at any given time can apply to you.
Yeah, depending upon what some outside influence does, which is like the material, the bottles and stuff. You know, that's the outside thing that you're blending together with the virtual code and machine movements. And there's a lot of things like that. I mean, I think that working on cars is like that too. If you know about that and you're interested in it and know what you can push and pull and change to make the outside performance a different experience, I think when you see that all running together, you still have that same pride. You know, and the deeper that you're into it, the more that fills you. Like if you also did the body work and the painting and the interior as well as the machine inside.
Yeah.
I think a lot of, especially males, really enjoy complicated things like that they can get to working on and get their hands in and stuff. And it manifests in a lot of different ways for people. But that's what I see when you're talking about it like that. It's the, you know, that you're orchestrating this whole thing and it makes you feel good because you can, you know, be creative to some extent and have that exercise, you know, you can have that manifest on the outside world.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I work a job where when I'm done, I can see what it is.
Yeah, and then
see
something,
and then see it function. Yeah, and then it's going to keep doing that for obviously decades. You know, for a long period of time when I'm done with it, and doing it well. You know, hopefully. Now we can't account for, like I said, anytime you stick human beings in the equation, that's when all the weird shit starts happening. So you can't account for that, but everything else we try to cover, yeah, it's fun, man. I get to go play with my toys. My favorite day on a project, startup day, when you actually start moving something.
Really?
When things have to start, kinetic energy starts turning into work done. You know, different things like that, and oh yeah, that gets in. Everybody gets all amped up, you know, and the nerves get all, you know, right on the edge. And people are barking at each other, and
that's the ephemeral part of it.
It's awesome. You know, it's very invigorating and exciting, and you know, and then when you're done, it's funny because you get all this tempers and all this kind of stuff, and then at the end of it, and when it runs great, then that same energy turns into pizzas and high fives, and, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yep. From begrudging to acceptance.
I don't even understand at this point, having done this for so long. It's been the same way for so long. Any major project I've ever worked on, there's always friction. Always. Anytime you're trying to do something, anything big, there's gonna be friction, you know. And so many people take that shit personal. It's like, man,
that's a lot of pressure, man. Some of those factories and companies that you're working with, there's a lot of money going on.
It's thousands of dollars a minute.
Yeah,
in some cases, sure.
The pressure is what it is. I think they'd all be really good people if they didn't have so much pressure that they were under and so much money.
Still doesn't make me solve problems any faster.
No.
at all. So I've just gotten to the point now where I'm like, okay, but you're talking to me, and I'm not fixing the problem because you're talking to me. So is that what we're doing now, or I can go back out there and fix the problem? So generally, I get left alone.
Let that guy do his thing.
I get a little Jekyll and Hyde-ish when I'm doing any kind. My kids will tell you that too. I'm not the same person when you have to work with me at all.
Well, you've told me that yourself in the past. You said that you were worse when you were younger.
Far worse when I was younger. Yeah, I get a little fucking crazy. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm trying, man.
Yeah, I haven't personally seen you like that. I've done a couple of house projects with you and stuff, but I haven't seen you get too bad. I think probably the closest was maybe just when you were working with other people who were doing crazy stuff, like Don.
Poor Don.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the closest I seen you get to be crazy. Like,
well, you should have been at the. You should have been in my kitchen Thanksgiving. That was because then you get a bunch of Frasers and together, and we're all like that to some level. I think it's probably a lot of where I get it from is that those Scottish roots, whatever. But. Woo! It was a good time, but the food came out phenomenal, and everybody had a great dinner. So, but it was, yeah. I'm not pleasant to work with a lot of times. Some people. I'm working on that though. I've gotten better, But I'm happiest with a laptop running around a factory somewhere fixing stuff. That's I love doing that.
Well, I mean, clearly it's not something that's to the point where it's causing any problems.
Well, and it's not
terrible.
It's not a team sport for me either.
I don't.
In other words, I'm not trying to sit down and do something with somebody else per se. A lot of this is here's your chunk of the pie, go do it, and that's where I do well. Even though I'm there with a team or a group of people, we're not like collaborating on a lot of stuff. It's very insular, and I can just kind of go do my thing, and then at the end of the day, a lot of times. There'll be one of us on the job site that's just there to do the whole, make sure everything gets together and works together. So it's like I said, it's not really a team sport, and I do better with that.
I think it would just be fun traveling, to be able to go someplace and
most people hate it.
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't. I don't think. I mean, I think it'd be cool because you can go someplace and then come back. It's like you're not there forever, and occasionally you have some downtime, so you could do like 1 or 2 or 3 things everywhere you went that was like outside of the context of absolute work. So that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, man. I experience every place I go through their restaurants.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And bars.
Like like you have a couple hours and you could just go get something to eat and see a city or something. I mean,
we work. We go out to lunch and we try to not hit the chains as much as possible.
Yeah.
Or we tend to like the smaller chains, and then we do that a lot, and then we do dinners out a lot too because you're not gonna go back and cook in your hotel room,
right?
Dinners or whatever.
And I think if there's anything worse than fast food, it's probably hotel food.
Oh, but I've been really surprised though. This last trip, I was staying with the Courtyard. This last trip, and they have a bistro in the lobby that's fucking I'm stunned at how good it is.
Wow.
We ate there probably 3 nights of our trip. It was just so convenient because it's okay. Eat and walk to your room, take a shower, and go to bed.
Right.
It's like, and it was good, and it's really good.
Is what you found most of the time though?
No. Hotel food usually is just one step above truck stop sushi.
Yeah.
It's usually pretty rough stuff, and I've been nothing but disappointed. But
that time was good.
So far, and what's funny is this was true with both because I stayed with them in Orlando, and then I stayed with them again in Indianapolis, and they have the same bistro, same menu, and it was just as good both locations. So there's also a quality. They've worked something out, man, that they've been able to kind of give you this really hearty, good tasting food that doesn't taste like it's been pre-prepared and everything, but it has. Somehow, because I've watched them, behind that little, they have like a Starbucks and everything in their lobby now. It's crazy. You can go down there and get sauced too. A lot of them have liquor licenses and stuff. So and it's a weird. The decor kind of gives me this odd, like Austin Powers sort of feel, like how it's got this. I don't know what's going on with like these weird, chairs that are shaped like a wave that you can kind of lay back in, and it's like
they're inviting you to get more comfortable than you typically want to be in public anyway.
and like there's like booths with TVs in them now, and so you can go in and like sit down and watch your own show. This is all in like their lobby, it's I don't know what they're on about, but it works, so it's been really surprising. You can just go down there and sit and hang out in this lounge, but it's very loungy, that's the word I'm looking for. I'm waiting for Hugh Hefner to come out in his fucking crushed velvet jacket and a cigarette.
Wow.
A glass of scotch,
And girls.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody's hanging out down there. But a lot of the times, the plants that I work at are very close to the airport because they tend to be in industrial parks and things like that, right? So they sort of go together. So a lot of these hotels I stay at, you've got the airline, the flight attendants and the pilots are coming in and staying in these same hotels too.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so when you're down there, it's like vulgar, foul-mouthed electricians and industrial engineers, flight attendants, pilots, like this weird mix of people hanging out down in these lounges and stuff.
All non-locals.
It's funny I was hanging out with my buddy Mike, shout out Mike Jones. We went out, we got like addicted to the salad bar at, what's the name of the place? I'm not going to think. Ruby Tuesdays as a salad bar. And so on this particular job, we were just like, man, that salad bar, every night we were just crushing this salad bar. It's like all you could eat salad bar. And so we were hanging out in there one night at the bar, and Mike, Mike's a heavy metal singer. He's a programmer too. Like I go out and do jobs with him and stuff, but he's also like a heavy metal singer. So he's got this huge beard, like really closely shaved head, and tats all over the place, like sleeve tattoos and stuff. So we're sitting in this bar, talking about the job, and the guy across the bar goes, "Y'all truck drivers?" Mike kind of looks at him.
Hopefully you guys are like, "Yep."
Well, because we're wearing like, we have factory gear on, a lot of times, like we don't wear in restaurants, but you can tell that we don't, you're not wearing a suit and tie to go in and crawl around on a machine. You're wearing jeans and T-shirts and maybe polo shirts or whatever, but it was funny how surprised he was when we told him, no, we're automation engineers, and he was just like, what? And then, which is generally followed by, what's an automation engineer? And
what you doing in here?
So it was funny that we were confused for truck drivers, So that's the world of engineering. I'm automation engineers. These, like the group of people are like we're like the hippies of engineers, okay? Because we don't really fit in we don't have pocket protectors and any of that kind of stuff, We're like, we look more like electricians and construction workers than engineers. Or truck drivers, as it were. Yeah.
Yeah, like I guess company truck drivers or something, Oh, we drive trucks for NASA.
Yeah, that's it. High-tech trucking.
And then just launch into how like a month ago, well, you're really not supposed to say anything, but like a month ago, you guys had to carry 24, like, I don't know, you thought they were coffins, but they had lights inside of them, but you're not really sure.
Yeah, right.
Just steer that conversation into some oblivion right there.
And those guys in the black suits that wore sunglasses at night, and it was weird.
Can I get 10 on 5? just like leave.
I never come. It's funny. You would think that, given how much of this stuff is speculated about at this point in time, with cell phone cameras and things being what they are and everything, that there would be some sort of earth-shattering, unequivocal type of information that would have come forth by now, right? Or it might be into expectancy here.
I don't know. I'm laughing because all I can Fuko on camera having sex with somebody, but we can't catch any aliens ever on any of these. Like I'm just thinking we can catch the most obscure things like that and make a huge big deal out of it and stuff, but but you can't catch any aliens. So I don't know. I mean, I don't believe in aliens, so I don't see the problem with not catching any on film. So.
It kind of makes sense, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it makes sense to me. Like, yeah, we can catch anything else. We can catch people who don't think they're on film doing things they would never do on film.
Right.
And they get in a lot of trouble for it.
Dude,
but
people film themselves doing stuff.
well,
they
I'm just
shouldn't be
saying, like,
doing
it's
now.
doing their best to avoid it. They get captured. I mean, you would think that there would be something that would
With
be captured
all
like
of the
that.
surveillance cameras and everything that exists in. I mean,
they have it on YouTube. They do have people who say that they do have security footage of cameras with things on them and everything from UFOs to creatures and stuff like that. But and I don't even know if
that would be a fun hobby, though, wouldn't it? To go out and figure out ways to put abnormality, like make stuff happen, and it shows up in like security cameras.
Yeah,
and then
well, that's what I was going to say. I don't think any of that stuff could be considered proof. I mean, even if you brought that in and had it, I don't think that would really mean anything.
Yeah, because it could be a couple kids from MIT just fucking with the security cameras.
Yeah, and it's on YouTube. I mean, you can go on YouTube and find that stuff. Like, it's crazy. Like, they've got it in categories and stuff. I mean, you can find where security cameras have caught aliens, UFOs flying around, creatures coming out of water, where tsunamis have hit and weird stuff like that. Giant spider-like things that crawl over buildings in Russia and stuff like that.
So real, like parent. I tell you, Chris.
Oh yeah, on ghosts.
when she was it Kristen Kaufman? I think it's. Man, if I'm getting her first name wrong, I'm gonna shoot myself. But she has some video that was some like hair raising shit that we shared. I've had her on the show a couple times, but some of the stuff she's experienced is some real interesting stuff, man. I don't leave out that there's not room for unexplained phenomena. Per se, you know what I mean? I definitely do, and I love hearing about that stuff. But I would have thought with aliens and with everything that gets recorded that at some point in time we should see some sort of like, holy shit, man, there it is.
A little sideways on that is the whole idea of the Drake equation, and the Drake equation with the right numbers shows that life should be pretty prolific throughout the universe.
Yeah, but define life or intelligent planet hopping going to...
Just carbon-based life. It doesn't have to be intelligent or anything like that. But, I mean, given that, like, your top 5 constituent components that make you up, your body, like water is mostly what you're made out of, which is hydrogen and oxygen. That's some of the top 3 abundant substances throughout the whole universe. I think carbon's somewhere 3rd, 4th. There's a lot of that everywhere.
I think the probability is exceptional, right?
Well, it should be. It should be.
But I think that if you just take the Earth as a microcosm, there's only one species that's breaking, with Earth's gravity and propelling itself into space.
Yeah, well, a lot of studies are saying...
Of all of the different species of animals and creatures that inhabit this Earth.
Yeah.
And so now transpose that math to outer space, and the next civilization that would even be mathematically possible may be so far away as to not exist, because of the vastness of space, man.
Well, they've been saying recently that the studies recently indicate that we are the most advanced species in the galaxy. That's why we're not finding a lot of aliens and stuff like that, is because we're it.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than us. There's no starfaring civilizations, because at this point in our own technological level, we are producing different things that would be able to be observed from hundreds of light years away.
Okay.
Like, we're making a big enough mark on our side of the galaxy where if somebody was looking, if that somebody was particularly an advanced species, right, like we're talking about, they would have the technology to see what we're doing already, like from afar. They would be able to detect the amount of methane around our planet with spectrometry, with things like that. They would be able to detect radio signals, even if they weren't defined enough where they could tell what those signals were. They could see that there were signals coming, right, that were different from the background surroundings.
Right.
So that we're doing things that should have us be picked up on the radar of any truly advanced species that was pretty far away.
We're like the Las Vegas of space. We're just blasting lights.
If they were looking for us, they should be able to find us if they're
Right.
more advanced than us with what we're doing. So it's, it's starting to look like, and there's a lot of articles you'd have to read on this, but a lot of it also has to do with just the age of the galaxy, and the amount of stars that produce heavy elements and how long they've been around to be able to produce something like that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of bottlenecks too that a species would have to get through. Like inevitably, every species will discover the energy locked inside of an atom at some point, because mass is everywhere, matter is everywhere, and it's going to react the same 800 light years across the galaxy as it does here. If they take that matter apart, it's going to explode. They're going to be able to invent the atomic bomb because it's inherent in every technology.
Right.
That will. So once that happens, of course, they've got to make sure they don't blow themselves up like we can, and we're trying not to do it.
Right.
But that's like one of those bottlenecks. And of course, you've seen we've went through all of our extinctions and stuff like the Permian extinction, and they're starting to say now that they feel that climate change was the reason for that, and that was when 98% of the species was wiped off of the planet. And they say that it was climate change, so that could happen again and stuff. So there's a lot of that sort of thing. Precession, our moon that orbits the Earth is closer to its mother body than any other moons are that we generally find, and it really helps stabilize our spinning. So precession is like when you spin a top, as it starts to slow down, it starts to wobble more and more, and that will really fuck up your planet's seasons and stuff. That's what's wrong with Mars, they say. They think that it lost its atmosphere when it stopped spinning because its precession got way out of whack, and it stopped the internal core from spinning, which shut off its magnetic shield and allowed the sun to blow away the atmosphere. And that's what they think happened. So at any rate, it could happen to us in that same way if we didn't have a moon that stabilized that precession and kept it more balanced. I mean, there's like a lot of weird factors that have
played in.
Yeah. I mean, even 65 million years ago when the asteroid hit the Earth and wiped out the dinosaurs, they could have been the dominant species. They could have been a reptilian species that was intelligent on this planet, but that got wiped out. And then mammals had a chance. Yeah.
Reset button.
Right, yeah. So, or maybe there wouldn't have been any intelligent species on the planet if that hadn't have happened. But the fact that a random event, because it was truly random, because the universe is so vast, it's really hard for a rock to hit any other thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's, unless they're really close together. But one just shooting out from like the Oort cloud hitting a planet, it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
And so the fact that even happened, it changed so much, but it was such a rare coincidence, and certainly wouldn't happen on every planet.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because when you think about all the amazing destructive things that can happen in terms of the universe and the galaxy and things like that, like giant asteroids ripping through and just pounding your, blowing your planet to be. I mean, that's. I mean, an asteroid big enough to destroy the Earth is not even a big asteroid in the scale of outer space,
or even our moon,
right? So, but because it's so big, the math is like in the millions of years per event, if not hundreds of millions of years.
And that's
per
it.
Event. So, and that's
it may not happen at all.
It may never happen in the scheme of things, right? Yeah.
But I mean, I guess my point is that given how rare it is, in that sense, and given the age of things and stuff, I kind of believe these new studies, and that it's very likely that we are the most intelligent species in the galaxy.
And that's just it.
Yeah. I mean, there may be life, like microbial life. There may even be animal life. But I don't think we're.
Well, you can't say, well, that's impossible, because it's completely possible, and mathematically it's completely possible.
Yeah.
And likely very probable.
They call it the Fermi paradox.
Why? Because it's named after
Enrico Fermi, who worked on the atomic bomb. He was an Italian scientist, and people would come at him with things like the Drake equation and the idea that life should be everywhere, and he would say, then where's that? Like, if it's supposed to be everywhere and there's supposed to be advanced species and stuff, well, where are they at? Like, and then that gave rise to the idea that we've, I think, talked about before on here, where it could be a situation like they depict in Star Trek: The Next Generation, where you're actually a planet inside a whole government of hundreds of planets, and there's life all around you. You just don't know it.
Oh, we're like that. Yeah, we could be like that tribe that's off of the coast of India that just killed that guy. Did you hear about this?
No.
There's a tribe of people that are uncontacted.
Yeah.
Okay.
And is the government making sure they're not going to be?
Correct.
Yeah, what like, it could be that the Federation says, oh, no, nobody can go to that planet. It's off limits, so they just avoid it. And we don't see them because they travel back and forth in subspace.
Right.
So to us, they disappear at their beginning location and just reappear wherever they're going to be at. That's how we would perceive that, like folding space and Dune. We couldn't see their travels. We couldn't see their communication because it's on a higher order. But if that's how it is, it would almost have to be that way. You would almost, when you're talking about an advanced species, if you're going to assume that we haven't been seen by them and contacted them by now, then you have to assume, if they're out there, that they must be avoiding you.
And they call that Occam's razor, though, right? But once you've removed everything that can't be true, what's left has to be the truth?
The simplest explanation is I think Occam's razor is that the simplest explanation is the most likely explanation.
Maybe.
So, like, if just for instance, if you're going to postulate that, like, say something moves on the table, and you could say, well, that's poltergeist, right? Or spirit did that. Or you can say that it was some other thing, like maybe there was a small earthquake and we didn't notice it and it moved something, right? Like, out of those two explanations, an earthquake moved this object on the table, or a poltergeist, the simplest one is the earthquake. Even though you don't know any more whether that happened than you do if it's a poltergeist, you can at least point to the fact that there have been earthquakes in this region that people have not noticed that have done damage. Whereas if you're going to postulate that it was a poltergeist, then you're also, along with that, you're postulating that there is an afterlife, and that afterlife must be designed in such a way that people can come back to this life and affect this life. So
which one's simpler?
Yeah. The other one starts all these questions like, well, how does this work? How does that work? And turns out, a much simpler explanation is probably the one, because you can explain all the questions, and eventually you'll get to a point where there's, the questions will just become absurd if you're asking, well, what makes vibrations, like that. But so,
well, if everybody just, I guess, used that, where would we get conspiracy theories and shit from?
Well,
there'd be no fun.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be any fun at all. I mean, that's essentially what they were doing when they came up with that zoo theory about it must be like Star Trek, where they're all avoiding us, and that's their prime directive and stuff. Like, you can see it in the works right there. You're already constructing this really elaborate spacefaring civilizations that have a governmental body that directs a prime direct. It's like you've already are universe building. Same thing with conspiracy theories. To make them work, you continuously have to construct onto them.
Yeah.
And as new information becomes available, you have to construct more and detailed and harder. When they sent some first probes to Mars, they thought they seen a face on Mars.
Yeah.
And all of this information came out, and then there was supposed to be a city and a dolphin effigy and like 5-sided pyramids and all this other stuff, and then they went over again, and it didn't at all look like a face, and they went over a third time, and it looked nothing like a face at all. But look at all the things that were constructed. They
Man, you see, that's just the government messing with you
Well,
by trying to keep that stuff hidden. That's all.
Yeah, it is. Well, and they tied that into Edgar Cayce, who was known as the Sleeping Prophet,
Yeah.
who was one of the people that came up with the ideas that the
Right.
Egyptians were from Mars and stuff.
Yeah, he
you know,
predicted something about there being a trove of knowledge or something
under
like
the
that
Sphinx. Yeah, a
And-
library.
and on Mars.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, like, it gets to be like
fascinating guy.
And well, I mean, like, the thing is, the weird thing is now, like, there's all of this lore and that you can find out about Mars and people from Mars and how they tie into our world and how they were Egyptians and how
Are they
were
the snake
Atlanteans.
people? Are they the reptilians that David Icke's always
I
talking
don't think
about?
I don't think they're the reptilian ones though. I don't think
Okay.
they were. They probably went underground when the asteroid hit 65 million years ago. But I mean, it's just like there's a whole lore now, but you go to Mars and there's nothing there. And
Right.
You're like, wait a minute. I read this book about how yeah, there's none of that. We can't find any of that. But so I don't know. It's just amazing though. They construct. And you can construct
You don't
all
have
of
to
that.
go to fucking Mars to see really interesting shit like that anyway. You can go to South America. You can go to
Yeah,
Peru.
just like you
can
were
go-
saying with that tribe and shit. Yeah. Well, I mean, to see interesting things,
Oh,
like you
right,
don't need
yeah.
to go out and see that there's a federation of different aliens together. You know, I mean, you can go on our own planet and find there's this tribe that's separated, which
Yeah,
is
right.
alien from any culture or
Yep.
anything that we know. And we have apparently all decided that that's okay. They're just a group of people, and no matter how crazy they are, or
Well,
how
this-
they
I
don't
mean,
fit, it's okay.
Like Ohio has the Indian Mounds and the Great Snake Mound, and there's like I went to down in Florida. There's a place called Coral Castle. I've went and seen it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like
yeah.
there's all this really interesting shit that you can go see. You don't have to go to Mars.
No,
that
yeah,
people
I
can't
gotcha.
really explain. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, oh, yeah, all over the world.
You don't have to make it up on Mars when it's right here in our own backyard. It's all over the United States, man. There's some really interesting like Travel Channel shows now about that kind of stuff. But there's all kinds of fascinating shit you can go see, like settlements and things that they're digging up from. I think from,
Viking settlements?
like
Yeah.
like and temples and
Yeah.
like there's a New Hampshire
Whole villages.
New Hampshire Stonehenge, or there's an Ohio Stonehenge.
There's
Like,
something like that. I forget which
you know,
state it's in.
That's all here. That's,
Yeah.
that all exists here right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And the stuff that's going on down in South America now, man, with they're using airplanes to and lasers to map the floor of the forest,
oh, yeah.
and they're
finding
finding
all the Oltec and Mayan and Aztec empires. Yeah.
I just dude. I cannot wait till someone gets in there with a shovel. You know what I mean? I know that it's going to be a long time because they have to be very diligent. These are unspoiled, as far as we know, archaeological sites, right? So
Yeah.
But I just cannot wait to see the richness of information that comes out of those cultures. And
Hopefully
stuff.
they'll find more text, because there's only like 2 or 3.
I would
codex
think
examples
so.
Yeah,
I
because
would
the
think so.
conquistadors burnt most of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on how these cities that they're finding, why they became abandoned.
Abandoned, right.
Yeah. Hopefully, I don't know if this is good, but hopefully because of some natural disaster or something where that kind of stuff is left.
I was watching. I think it's on Netflix. You know, who John Leguizamo is.
Yeah.
He was in the movie Spawn. He was the clown, but he's also a comedian. Does like this interesting sort of comedy / acting one man show thing. And he's got one called, I think it's called Spanish for Idiots or something like that. And he goes through and talks about, the size of the population that actually lived in South America, and their culture and their civilization, their organization, and that they were basically wiped out by disease. It wasn't that the conquerors, the conquistadors, actually came in. Generally, when they showed up the first time, they got their ass whooped and left. And this was with people that used like wooden sticks and stuff, So, but they were there long enough to sort of transmit their flu viruses or whatever into the population, and so it was more like germ warfare that.
But then they went.
out.
But then when that happened, they went through and gathered up all of the writings they could find and
Burn
burnt them. Yeah.
Yeah, they erased these people's history, man. I mean, like
Yeah.
just like, And I suppose, you would think if, these people show up and then they curse you and they leave and 75% of your population dies, and you not understanding why that just happened, you would probably view them in some godlike sort of,
it wasn't
respect.
long after that in the colonial period, the Portuguese and the English started coming over to Brazil and Peru and going into the interior and hunting what remained of those people and making them slaves to work on sugar plantations and silver mines.
It's crazy because you're talking about like nation states of people, millions of people.
Yeah.
In the tens and 20s in some of these countries. I think one of them had 52 million. They estimated the population at 52 million. And 75% of them in 1 year is dead.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
And I don't know if they've fully recovered even to this point in today's age. I think they're just now starting to. But, I mean, they've basically faced one crisis after another. Like after that, then there was the colonial period that they went through where they were slaves and stuff. And then after that, they went through a couple of revolutionary periods. And then after that, the United States had won basically the World War II and the Cold War, and like was just like another empire that they had to deal with and stuff. And so that was difficult. A lot of them were.
Yeah, but man, I think what they're staring down the barrel of, no pun intended, and not meant to be in any way disrespectful, but I think South America is going to become the place for archaeology. Like it's going to transplant like Egypt in the Middle East, because there's so much stuff down there that just has never been touched, and it's such a huge civilization and rich cultured civilization was just like a light switch turned off.
It'd be good if they could have their own archaeologists make a lot of those discoveries too. That would really help.
Yeah,
a lot of those nations. There's like 22 nations in South America that would probably benefit from having that sort of thing, where they were in control of that, where you could go down and check it out and stuff.
Yeah, because what they're going to uncover is just how advanced these civilizations really were.
Yeah,
give these folks I think knowing that kind of stuff, having that cultural identity is important, because their cultural identity in a lot of ways was reset.
Yeah.
On them.
Oh yeah.
Against their will.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
A unifying kind of thing.
Yep.
That
would be good. That's what they've needed. That's why they've had a hard time going through independence and stuff. When they had their first independence phase, like, was just disastrous for them. And there was even a group of people that kind of rose up and was like, you know what, we can't really govern ourselves. We need our betters to do that for us, sort of thing. And that was the people from Spain and Europe and stuff that weren't natives. I mean, the native population was pretty much decimated from the get-go.
Right. I had an Uber driver here recently that had an asylum out of one of those South American countries, and
I don't remember which one.
I can't remember. I think it was where is it that they're having Hugo Chavez? Hugo Chavez. Where's he at?
I think that's Nicaragua, but I'm not sure.
I don't think so. But anyway, point being is, in his country, he was an attorney, and he drives Uber in Florida now,
wow.
and likes it much better than, I guess it was bad, he was trying to defend people against a state that would, his exercising his function as an attorney would have been considered treason.
Yeah.
Because he was disobeying the state.
That's the thing. There's a few of those that are currently like that. Nicaragua was one. Can't say it. That they've been going through lately, where they've been releasing records and stuff of what happened, like in the 80s and 90s and stuff. So there's been a lot of unrest there with the government, but I'm not sure.
I just watched. I think it's called American Made. It's about this guy named Barry Seals that flew like covert missions for the CIA in like South America and Nicaragua and stuff back in the 80s. And
Oh wow, that's cool.
oh no, it's and it's funny because in parts of the movie it like stops and it's got Tom Cruise in it and he's just narrating and he says something like, now remember, everything you've seen is absolutely true, because it's just like, what in the hell is going on, where he ended up flying drugs back. So he was like, instead of flying a dead leg back when he would go down and shoot film for the CIA, he's picking up cocaine and shit and was airdropping it into the swamps in Louisiana for cash. He had so much cash they couldn't figure out what to do. There was a scene in the movie where he's got a suitcase full of cash and he just started like just burying it in his backyard because they had no place left to keep it. And he goes out with a shovel and he's digging a hole to bury the cash, and there's already cash there. So now he doesn't even have enough room to bury the cash. He's made so much money, doing all this stuff, and then then he ended up running weapons, and just it was crazy. Ultimately, the summation of the movie is him being assassinated, because disavowed, and it all had ties into like Iran-Contra and Oliver North and the shredding of the papers, and like all of this was all tied into this guy Barry Seals, who was just like this dumb luck. He's an airline pilot, but he was just one of them guys that was just at a weird place in his life, and then the CIA just come along and plucked him up like right at the prime moment, and he started living this fanboy life of being a spy and a CIA. It was funny. There's a part in the movie where he's in jail, and the CIA guy comes in and goes, and he says, "I think they know I think they know I work for the CIA, or I think they know I'm with the CIA." And the CIA agent looks at him and goes, "Barry, you're a drug runner. You don't work for the CIA, right?" Like they just completely disavowed him, But he was training like freedom fighters on this land the CIA put him up on down in Tennessee, like all kinds of crazy shit. He was flying these people in, and they were training them in the U.S. and then flying them back, but they would come here and then not want to leave, so they'd disappear. So they were having all this problem with getting these guys to stay. I was like, wait a minute, wait. I can train to shoot people and get shot, or I can split.
Right.
Find me
I can go back and risk death again, or I can just leave.
Or I could just leave, and it's a lot nicer here, so fuck you, I'm out of here, Oh, God, it is. And it's a true, this is all purported to be all a true story, but of course the CIA completely disavows it and all this kind of shit.
Who killed him?
They think in the movie they portrayed it as being like the Panamanians, because he got wrapped up in the movie. The way the movie portrayed it is what got him killed was Just Say No and Nancy Reagan. In that, so he was still flying for the CIA. And rather than, so he got pinched during the big drug pinch stuff that went down during the Reagan's administration, because he was running drugs. I mean, right? They got him dead to rights. Okay, they knew he was. And the CIA tipped him off that it was coming anyway. And different. I mean, it was crazy the shit that went down. But so anyway, he so then they were like, look, we don't want to throw you in jail. We don't want you to stop. We want you to start working for the good guys now. Which was fucking ironic, because it meant doing exactly the same thing
for exactly the same kind of people, really.
For exactly the same people.
Oh.
But this time, get pictures. That's all it meant. That was basically fundamentally all he did different, was they put cameras in his plane. So he goes and gets photos of these different, people, leaders that were, he was bringing them like Harley Davidsons and shit on a cargo plane. By the way, spoiler alert, if you're going to see this movie, but so I probably should have said that up front.
Alert.
Right? Alert, air quotes, alert. So, but he gets pictures of them, and then during a speech with Ronald Reagan talking about the scourge of drugs and all this shit in the country, he shows these pictures, and they're the pictures Barry took. So then everybody who he was ratting on knew instantly that he was a rat. So then everybody he's done business with for the CIA, up to and probably including the CIA at that point, wanted him dead.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, there's all kinds of conspiracy theories around that, right? So But the movie postulated that or showed, and I don't know, maybe this is proven, I don't know, but that it was the drug cartel that offed him. They're the ones that killed him, you know. But he did, you know. Supposedly he had filmed all these confessions and all that. When the cartel killed him, they were all in the trunk of his car because he wouldn't stay in the same place more than one day. He was constantly moving, but he had to go back to this halfway house every day at a certain time, and so he figured that, you know, sooner or later they were going to figure that was the one place where he was all the time, and he showed up and they killed him in a parking lot.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, he was basically he didn't even do any jail time. It was weird. Like, I mean, he got. I'm trying to think. Did he? I can't remember. It's you got to see it, man. It is an off the hook. Just crash landed an airplane in a neighborhood, and
you said it was on Netflix.
Yeah, I think it's. Oh no, I watched that on like HBO Go or something like that while I was on the road. I'd never seen it. It's an older movie. It's like 2 or 3 years old, but it's so.
And what's
so
it called again?
I think it's called American Made.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about this guy Barry Seals.
I'll see if I can find it. I haven't watched Netflix in like 2 years, 2.5 years. I might have time to do that now.
Yeah, right. For a change, huh? It's kind of nice not having anything to do for a couple weeks, huh?
Yeah. I already feel kind of bored.
We got used to moving at light speed.
Yeah. I got to figure out. I got to put something into that hole, other than a 20-hour job. Because I'll go crazy. So I'm gonna starting tomorrow. I'm going to start looking for this, that, and the other stuff to see whatever it is I'm doing. Start straightening all that out.
Yeah. Well, it's cool shit, man. It feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I wish I knew more about what I was going to do
moving forward.
Yeah, I wish I had like a clearer plan, but you know, like it's all good. Like option A, B, C, and D are all good.
All good options.
I just don't know which options come to, you know.
Right.
But I'm not too worried about any of them.
Just
so yeah, it feels good. Yeah.
Play it by ear.
Yeah. Just not figure it out because I don't know. Just depends.
So it was great, man. We got you back to tell us all about like Fermi theories and shit that have nothing to do with history.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of does have.
We talked a little bit, didn't we, about history?
Like
with South American history.
Yeah. What's your focus going to be in?
Well, if I go to get my master's, it'll be biblical studies probably.
Really?
Yeah. It was between that and like the history of battles.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool, but the whole reason I even started down the path of getting a history degree was that I had a huge interest in first century Palestine.
Right.
You know, and first century Christianity.
No, now that I got you here, Mr. Biblical Studies, okay, I'm assuming ancient religions and the history of ancient religions and shit like that. Can you tell me, somebody who's actually studied this, is there a single one of them that knew the earth was round?
Of the ancient religions?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because I forget who it was, but it was one of the ancient philosophers who first came up with how big they thought the circumference.
Oh, no, yeah, I get they stuck the sticks in the ground and all. No, I'm not talking about them. They did that mathematically.
Well,
I'm talking about through the great spooky spirit in the sky told them.
Oh, I don't think so.
Like because they all thought the earth was flat, right? And I just thought this was funny that was one of them things I thought would have come up.
It's possible that the Mayans didn't.
Because of the way they understood time?
Well, because they had a lot to do with astronomy and stuff. A lot of the religion is tied into that. A lot of the math was tied into that because, you know, they like invented zero and stuff like that. So they may have conceived even back then in their religion as it being a globe, but I think it would have been inconsequential to the religion. I think it would have just been something they may have perceived the planet as. And that's kind of what I meant about.
But again, that's a perception thing. That's a measurement. I think it was the Greeks that did it.
Yeah,
okay,
but
figured
I don't
out
know.
within like a couple miles of accurate how.
But to be honest, I'm not sure if there's any reference to like the word sphere or globe or anything like that. I don't know.
And I just thought this would be, you know, while while certain men were being imbued, or people, I should say, were being imbued with the most divine knowledge of everything, that where does the sun go at night would have been a question somebody would have asked, in these conversations with these deities,
There was a monk
or something to that effect,
There was a monk that was jailed for asking questions like that, and for, I forget exactly what it was, but like I'd have to go back and look. But there was a monk who was in history had questioned a lot of that stuff about there being life on other planets and about infinity and things like that.
So we sort of forget this, right? Because the fact that the sun goes up and goes down, different cultures and religions and things accounted for that. But it was always some sort of divine energy, divine something or other that said that the gods provide the heat and the rains and all of this kind of stuff. And once we understood that the earth revolves and then revolves around the sun, that's what causes all of this stuff. So we forget that all of this at one point in time was given to these divine powers were making all this happen.
Yeah.
And that's what sort of props up these beliefs and things. But those have all gone away now, right? So why didn't that come up back then? That I don't really give you the seasons. It's the precession of the rotation of the earth around the sun. That's how it all works.
Yeah, most of the really ancient ones just have the sun moving around the planet, with the planet being the center and stuff. So they may have conceived it as a globe in that sense, but they definitely always, those ancient religions always perceived the earth like as the center of everything, and things revolved around it from ancient times up until when Kepler and Constantine, I think, not Constantine, Kepler and who's the other guy that was instrumental in saying that the earth wasn't the center of the
Bruno?
No. Kepler and Copernicus.
Okay.
That's who it was. Those were the two guys that were like the main guys that brought everybody to the idea that it's the planet going around the sun, not the sun going around the planet. But I mean, even way back to the Babylonian Sumerians, they perceived it that way, because like the Egyptians and the Sumerians both had deities in control of those celestial bodies and had them kind of pitted against each other in a battle, that so that they thought that one person in that battle would chase the other person around, and that's what was going on there in this conflict. So, but I don't
know. That's always perplexed me, is that in the middle of because these deities are really, really good at handing down all these laws and shit that men have to follow, but they're not real big on explaining much of anything that we now just take as science, that we just look and go, oh, yeah, that's how that works, right? So,
well, at the risk of exposing my anti-theist self, I would say, the gods were created by men, and the laws are supposed to be given by the gods, but obviously were made by the men and not given by the gods and stuff. So, you're only going to get as far as the current technology. If you don't realize certain aspects of science in your society, you're just going to make up a myth.
I kind of got to the point where to me, it's like this. Okay, look, growing up and rebelling against my Christian roots, or whatever you want to call that. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll follow all the laws that I know that even the Bible says God wrote himself, which is the 10 Commandments. And everything else has been written by people, because that's the only part in the whole Bible that was supposed to be actually have written by the fiery finger of God, right?
Yeah.
And they're pretty good rules. They're not bad rules. So, I think that they're golden rules in a sense, even that those ideals predate even Egypt and things like that, right? We talked about that a little bit, but beyond that, I think everything else in there is interpretation, according to that book itself, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of it. Like, if you're talking about the Old Testament, there's a lot of the Old Testament stories that come from Samaria and Babylon, that they recapitulated in their own way. Like the story of Noah is a Sumerian story.
Yeah.
That the Jewish people took with them when they left Babylon and reinterpreted it. Noah is a Sumerian name. Um, some of it comes from Egypt. Moses is the same as Tutmosis. It's an
Right.
Egyptian name.
I've heard that before too. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people just don't think about it, but you just add that little thing in front of it. Oh, fuck, yeah. But,
There's awful lot of coincidences when you start lining up the cogs on the wheel, for sure.
There's a lot of writings from, I believe it's Psalms, that have been found in older Egyptian texts. And of course, we found the story of Noah on cuneiform tablets that predate anything in the Old Testament by at least 1,000 years. I mean, so we've literally found these stories in the Old Testament and other places in older writings. So they didn't come from these people in this time. They came from before.
Yeah.
And from other people, because, I had this it was a weird thing in college. I took a comparative religion class, and I was asking the rabbi who taught this comparative religion class about the Jewish people being originally from Babylon, being originally Sumerian people, and possibly having come from Canaanite Egypt and Babylon, and formed like a new race of people. And he absolutely disagreed with that. Now, that's something I've read in books. I've seen it on documentaries. I've had discussions with other professors about this, and it seems to be accepted academically that that's the case, that the Jewish people originally were from Babylon, and they were exiled. And
so is that where the Exodus story comes from then?
No, it was before that. And but
No, I understand that, but there's been no archaeological proof of the events of the book of Exodus, right?
Not much. There's a few things that they have found, but I don't know if they're totally sure that that's Exodus proof or not. But they have found some writings and stuff that they think may have been done by the people who were in the Exodus out in the desert on cave walls and stuff like that.
This is the thing, so you're not a religious person, but you find religions rich and enriching and fascinating, and the history and everything, the actual history of it, just as fulfilling as the supernatural history of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that kind of gets missed? That between the factions of believers and non-believers fighting over this, that because ultimately, I don't think that when the archaeologists start to actually connect these dots, and the historians and everything really start to put this stuff together, that in any way, shape, or form does it diminish the richness of the culture or the religion per se.
I don't think it does. I mean, I know people like Don earlier, who, when discussing the historical Jesus, he felt that was faith destroying. I guess because he feels like you're bringing it down to earth and making it non-spiritual. But most people that I have talked with about it find it to be faith enhancing. They find that they feel that it adds legitimacy to what they've been saying.
Right.
That's what I think most people think. But I don't know. I mean, I just find it to be very interesting, because I find it interesting what people do. I find it interesting how people interpret religion.
Okay.
So, broadly speaking, religion is everywhere, but there's so many different kinds of religion.
Absolutely.
So many different ways of manifesting that religion through rituals and deeds and this, that, and the other thing, writing of scripture and things like that. And so it's just fascinating to me to study how mankind has reacted to the idea of religion and the works that they've produced based on it, the acts and deeds they've done, the transformations in their society and their governments and their civilization. I mean, it's been with us for a long time. It affects us still today with blue laws, like not being able to buy alcohol at certain times and things like that, or stores being closed on Sunday and stuff like that. it still sticks with us. It still is manifesting in 2018. Religion still does
Yeah.
in lots of ways. Sometimes terrible ways with wars and politics, and sometimes in just innocuous ways, like I was saying, like when you can buy liquor, you can't buy it after this time, or you can't buy wine on Sunday. You know, you got to be drinking wine because it's a spiritual thing. You got to be recapitulating Passover if you're a Christian, or the Exodus if you're Jewish, and drinking it for not those reasons on Sunday, because that would be irreligious of you. And so they make a law saying you can't do it. And that doesn't make any sense, not logically. It's just a religious law. And we're not supposed to be a religious nation, but I just had a class, my last class was how much was Christianity involved in the founding of the United States. And, you know, that's, if you look at it, if you call it the United States, there's a lot of religion in it. There's a lot of the state constitutions that have aspects of religion in it. And some of the first, you know, all of the first colonies started off being very religious. But if you're looking at it on a federal level, from a federalist point of view, it's not. You know, the federal government doesn't say that there's any one religion,
and that's the rub.
Yeah,
really, at the end of the day, it's a nation of states.
Yeah,
and the states were given tremendous leeway, especially in the beginning,
and still now they pass all that off to the states.
Yeah,
the
structure themselves how they see fit, and because of that. Especially if one's not traveled and lived other places much, the perception would be that my reality is the only reality, so it has to be X.
Yeah.
And so, depending on which way you're looking at it, you could absolutely be true. In your fundamental world, you're right. Everything you're saying is absolutely right. But on the grander scale does not mean that that's necessarily true. And then they see that as an affront.
Yeah.
Of some sort of, what would you call that? Nostalgia, almost,
front to their beliefs, that they believe that we have a Christian nation here. You know, a lot of people felt that way, like John Winthrop, when he gave his speech of the city on the hill, when he was coming over from the Protestant movement. Reagan in the 80s used that terminology in speeches that he gave to reflect that same sort of an aspect of a Christian nation. So every so often we go through a revival where a lot of the right-wing politics revive the idea that this is a Christian nation, and you see it coming into the federal government, and then we go through lulls where, you know, other people start getting irritated and pointing out, oh, no, that's not how it was supposed to be, and it was like this, and there was separation of church and state, and this and that. And a lot of people will use that phrase, the wall between church and state. So, like, originally that phrase was coined from a religious guy who was talking about the wall between the church and the wilderness. That's how that was originally used, that he was saying the church imparted order upon the wilderness. You know, that's what was happening, and that there was a difference between the unclaimed and unsettled and where the church was. You know, and since most of the British colonies... And see, that's another question. Like, when do you consider that we became a nation? Was it when, because, you know, we all started off as British colonies, so we never really started off a nation, but at some point we had the Declaration of Independence, so it could be considered at that point, or it could be considered after we won the Revolutionary War. It could be considered when the Articles of Confederation were drawn up and we were utilizing all the states as a single government to promote our independence. Or was it after that when we won the war, or was it when the Constitution was drafted, or was it after the Civil War when we controlled other states to not, like, there's a lot of, some people even argue it all the way up until you have the freedom movements and rights movements,
Right. Civil rights.
Yeah, because the Constitution inherently includes slaves, like, with the 3/4 policy.
Right.
So, like, you couldn't really say that that's a fully libertarian free country. So not until a certain point in time can you really say that we were a nation where everybody was considered to be a citizen and treated equally and could vote, and so
it's been a little fluid, hasn't it?
Yeah. So when did we become a nation? When does that federal government actually kick in? And and another thing to consider is one of the things that they didn't want to do when they were drafting the Constitution and working on a stronger federal government was they didn't want it to be tyrannical. They didn't want it to be like a king. So they didn't want to pick any one religion because a lot of Protestants had come over with various religions for the freedom of religion. So they didn't want to have to pick one of those and say, well, this is the right one and everything else is wrong. That would have been very tyrannical. Thomas Jefferson refused to do any kind of Christmas celebrations or anything like that as the President of the United States because he said that would make him look like a king because the king was a temporal and spiritual ruler. But the president was not. He was a temporal ruler and shouldn't be involved in that sort of things. And then he went out and had his ceremony in another church someplace else where they presented him with a 1,200-pound block of cheese.
There's a detail.
Yeah. I outlined that when I was reading it in the book, and we didn't talk about it in class, so I had to raise it up. I'm like, hey, what's up with this cheese thing,
Well, you just can't.
That's just what they gave him. They gave him this giant block of cheese that was like 1,200 pounds. I guess he liked cheese.
And a lot of prunes.
Yeah, maybe. There's and then I went to the library and looked, and there was a couple of kids' books on it, so we ordered them for our library. Because it's a thing.
Of all the things to get, a block of cheese for Christmas, nonetheless.
This is how I carve out my little spot of academia. I find those weird things.
We could go on with this shit for hours, man. I know. It's like insane. Oh, my God. Yeah, it's funny, perception, how perception and your reality can, and for me, living in other states had a lot to do with that, and I mean, just in the States, inside the U.S., things that would get you punched out are said to everybody every day, and the Northeast, without even giving it a second thought.
I lived in Texas for 6 years, and that's definitely a different place. The best way I could sum up my personal experience in Texas was the people down there are super, super, super nice. Probably some of the nicest people around. But there is definitely a social clique about the whole state that if you don't fit into those precepts, you're quickly alienated by everybody.
Like an all or nothing kind of thing.
Yeah, if you're not, essentially, another way of saying that is if you're not one of the good old boys, then you're completely ostracized. You're either one of the guys, one of the group, and you adhere to the same politics and religion and stuff that group does, and ideology, or you're always going to be considered a foreigner or a Yankee or something like that. They still have a really strong separatist attitude.
Well, that's as of how long ago?
1990. 95.
A lot can change in 20 years.
That's true. That's true. A lot had changed since I had been there in the 80s when I went back then. But that was still something that was really prevalent and strong, And I think a lot of I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. A lot of where they're coming from is from pride and justifiable pride. A lot of the history of Texas is the history of frontierism,
Oh, for real?
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that happened that were important to our nation and stuff, and so, I can kind of see where they're coming from. They have a proud history, and to be honest, the federal / North dampens a lot of that for them. It looks at that and says, "Oh, that stuff is terrible and it's obsolete and it's passé," and get rid of that. And it, really kind of looks down on it. So they end up walking around with a bit of a chip on their shoulder, I think, because of that.
Yeah, don't mess with Texas, buddy.
That's what I'm saying. That's like, where did that come from? Like, clearly, they feel a little antagonized by the rest of the states.
Do you know where that? Do you know what that logo or that Don't mess with Texas. What is that? That says saying or whatever.
I guess slogan saying.
Do you know where slogan came from?
I have no idea.
An anti-littering campaign.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, they were having a problem with. I seen this guy. He does a real. I think it's a TED talk or something. A real interesting speech on that and where it came from. And they ended up with like Matthew McConaughey and Chuck Norris. Don't mess with Texas. He goes, so they did a focus group and they were trying to figure out what demographic of people littered the most, and they boiled it down to largely, late teens, early 20 males. So they said, why don't we write an ad campaign that sort of focuses on that sort of demographic? And that's where the "Don't Mess with Texas"
That's interesting.
kind of idea came from. Because one thing you could count on from that demographic would be their state pride. Okay, so then they just got a bunch of stars coming out, saying "Don't mess with Texas," and it worked, man. I mean, it like cleaned the state up in like 5 years. It reduced littering by some astronomical amount. But now that slogan has become synonymous with Texas.
Yeah.
Don't mess with Texas, right?
I mean, that's
it's
some sales marketing, isn't it?
It's really about not just throwing all your empties from the bed of your truck in the side of the road. That's really what it's about.
Not now. It means something completely different.
Totally different, right?
Like the Confederate flag. What?
I didn't say nothing.
Okay.
I was just letting that one sit out there for a while, man. You said it.
Yep. I did.
Let that hang on the vine.
Yep. Oh, yeah. So, I was going to say something else after that. Now I completely
forgot.
It
was profound and just it would have been so knowledgeable.
Oh, yeah, here it is.
Okay, let's hear it.
Grey Poupon.
We're going to talk about mustard.
Yep. Wrap and mustard.
Oh, I've heard this before.
Yeah, we talked about this. This is what this whole Texas slogan thing reminds me of.
Of how Grey Poupon has showed up in so many different
rap songs,
rap and hip hop songs.
Yeah, like 152 or 157 or something like that. You can go on YouTube and just put in Grey Poupon rap, and you'll find there's a like a little short 7-10 minute video where somebody shows all of the songs that it's been in and kind of analyzes it. And
because it's not right. Grey Poupon was the what do you call it? What it was as a product was supposed to be the indulgence that the average person could afford.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And somehow has become synonymous with opulence, which is the exact opposite of what the product was supposed to be.
Yeah. And again, it was like a sales technique, and it worked so well. Like I believe they said it doubled their income like after the sales went off, and they had it for like a really long time. And in this video, somebody calls up and there's like, it's been like this for a while. We was thinking about changing the slogan or doing something different, and the guy on the other end that had invented this slogan and had been sitting on his laurels for a while was like, well, it's a pretty good slogan and it doesn't cost you anything. Are you sure you want to change it? And I think that they just continued to go with it. They're like, that's true. It's just some words and that's it.
Some spicy mustard has become synonymous with having money and wealth, and
apparently it rhymes with plenty of things. Tell me, is this rhyming? So, do you know what the word purloin means? Something that's been purloined. It's something that's been stolen.
Okay.
Right? So to purloin something is to steal it, right? And you know how sometimes you say "age" on the end of things, like, purloinage. There's plenty of purloinage going around, or suffrage, or
maybe
suffrage.
Maybe in the circles you run in.
Yeah, I run in circles. Yes, I run in circles.
But no, I can't relate at all.
Oh, okay. I mean, like you've never said, I don't know, like foliage and.
Oh yeah, yeah. But not. I've never uttered the word
you wouldn't.
purloinage.
No, you wouldn't say purloinage probably, but people do that, and they say that. So, I would, it's hard to find a word that rhymes with the word orange.
Okay.
And I thought maybe you could have some rap license to say something like, there was much purloinage even of the oranges. Isn't that as close as you can get to rapping and rhyming with the word orange?
I got a question.
Why am I thinking of this?
Does this shit keep you up at night?
Not once I figured it out. No. But Yeah, you can see
Yeah,
I've gotten a little bored since school has stopped.
You would be, yes, I think that rap would kill it with the literary hip hop fan crowd. Yeah, that big giant demographic of
Right. It's like I got a weapon that I don't know how to use. I need to pass it off to somebody else that can use it.
Holy crap! No, I've never.
I've been trying to rhyme the word orange for a long time.
Yeah, it is a tough word to rhyme.
It is.
Why though?
The challenge. Why did Captain Kirk climb the mountain? Why did
No, I said, why do you think the word orange is so hard to rhyme?
Because it's an Arabic word.
Are you saying that all Arabic words are hard to rhyme?
A lot of them are.
Yeah. Well, if you're trying to do it in English, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, we're using the word in English, so
in Arabic they probably fucking kill it.
Yeah.
You know, they have no problem. But.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe the orange should be called something else.
Maybe. Can you think of anything that rhymes with the word orange?
I don't know what else you would use. What else would you use to describe that citrus?
I don't know, because it's a color too.
Right.
So we're gonna have to
we'll
maybe come up with 2 words.
Alone, right? Maybe we leave the color alone.
No, you still got to rhyme phonetically the word orange, whether it's color or
softball-sized citrus fruit. You know.
Yeah, know. We have to figure out what the wavelength of orange is.
Yeah.
That way you could just describe it by wavelength instead of saying the color orange.
It's trilateral pixel count in computing, right? 255 of this, 25 of that, 7 of this. Boom!
You're a trilateral pixel count.
What'd you call me? Hour and 36 minutes, man. You haven't been on a podcast in like 6 months.
No.
So you just jump right back in here and bang out an hour and a half like nothing. Pretty good.
Hey, man. I work on rhyming the word orange. I can kick out an hour and a half worth of other nonsense.
At least you're entertaining, my friend. Oh, shit. Well, bud, it's been great having you back on. Why don't we start wrapping this up here?
Sounds good.
Man, it's been a lot of fun. Hope to have you back.
Oh, absolutely.
Soon. So, again, out there, folks, thanks for listening. Check us out, noshitcast.com.
And remember, reply to us and let us know if you found anything that rhymes with the word orange.
Yeah, this is a must-have.
Yes.
We got to figure this out for sure.
We need your help.
Things that rhyme with orange. That's the name of the podcast right there.
Yeah.
There we go. Awesome stuff, man. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. We'll catch y'all next time. Bye.